trust your intuition. I doubted my intuition so many times. We all have these like times of self-doubt, and it was a huge mistake. I would say 9 times out of 10, my intuition, especially with products and direction on the products, was right. Sometimes it's wrong, but it's better to pursue that wrong path quickly than to like go in the circles of like self-doubt. And I have a bad habit of doubting myself, and then I'll bring almost like too many resources. I'm an over-resourcer, so I'll bring too many opinions in the room, and then it just becomes noisy, and like you don't decide anything. And we had some real struggles, and I had some real frustrations and disappointment from my team members at Iconic over the years, because they're just like, what are you doing, man? We believe in you. And like, you're trying to get all these other opinions, all this kind of stuff. So I would just say, trust your intuition.
He built a protein empire from the ground up, and now he's tackling longevity. Meet Billy Bosch, the founder of Iconic Protein, and a wealth of business wisdom. In this episode of The Health Hustle, we uncover the secrets behind his success, the power of cool, which was a fun conversation, the importance of profit over revenue. We'll explore his journey from selling protein shakes to building a personal brand, and dive deep into the marketing strategies that helped him stand out in a crowded market. Get ready for a dose of inspiration, actionable advice, and maybe even a few longevity hacks. Let's go. It's so weird. I never had a craving for money when I was younger. I don't know. Like, really? I thought it was just something I was supposed to do. So like when I was 15, I got my first job, because that's like how old you had to be to get your first job.
Yeah.
And it was just like one of those things where I was like, yeah, you just do it because you get money, and then you can somehow use that for stuff. But
yeah,
I don't know. I never had like a super, it's probably like a first world problem, right? Of like not having to worry about it for the most part. But
yeah.
It's definitely changed as I got older though. Now that I see the value in it and the ability to create freedom from it. But when I was younger, I was like, man, whatever. Like, I'll just live poor. I don't know. It was very weird. Anyways, Billy Bosch, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this.
Happy to be here. Yeah.
So where I want to start is a quote I heard you say that I thought was great. And it says, revenue is vanity and profit is sanity. Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you?
I learned that way too late. So I'll give you a brief story. I was in an organization when I started Iconic called Entrepreneur Organization. It's a very large group, EO, as it's known around the world. And I joined the Louisiana chapter, and I was in this business accelerator that they had, which is basically just like you're learning, you're sub $1 million, you're just getting started, and they try to get you over the $1 million mark. And so part of that was a guy came to speak. His name is Greg Crabtree. And Greg is like he's this sweet guy from Alabama, real soft-spoken CPA, but he makes the rounds, just talking about like how to drive a profitable business. And so I listened to him talk, and he gives his little thing, and he's kind of educating us on how to grow a healthy business, which makes a lot of sense. And I'm like, well, Greg, the thing is in beverage, and I'm launching a protein beverage, I know, right? This is my thing. I said, everybody raises money in beverage, And he's like, okay, yeah, I've seen that. He said, let me give you an example. There's Milo's Tea, which is a popular tea company in the South, right? I don't even know if they made it to Texas, mostly like Alabama, Mississippi, Gulf Coast. And he's like, I had Milo's as a client, and then I also had Sweet Leaf Tea as a client, which was out of Austin, okay? And Sweet Leaf sold to Nestle, and they raised $100 million. They did all this stuff. But he's like, which one would you rather be? And I'm like, oh, Sweet Leaf, man, they went big. Everybody knows them nationwide. And he's like, well, let me tell you, the founders of Milo's have a cash vault, okay? It's a huge vault just full of tons of cash because it's a cash printing machine, okay? They never raise money. They own it all. Smaller, less notoriety. And then Sweet Leaf, they went bigger in revenue, but it was low margin. And they had all these investors and a big cap table and all this kind of stuff. And like the founders walked away with like $1 million or something, let's say. I don't know what the number is, but it was like much lower. And I said, okay, that's interesting, but I think I can do it differently. And so it took me a while. And then fast forward 6-7 years, and I had raised almost $20 million for this company, Iconic, and had investors, 50 people on the cap table, all this stuff. And I connected with him again at another event through EO. And I said, Greg, I've seen the light. I've really come full circle, because we had some challenges during COVID where some of the investors, they didn't want to put in more money, and the business was just burning a lot of cash because there's a ton of cash needed for beverages. And so I had him to do some like forensic accounting and also build some financial models to get us to profitability and what that would take. So I kind of worked with him again. And so this is one of his quotes. And so it's become like a mantra of mine, where I'm like, any new business I'm starting is going to be profitable from the start. And it's less about the vanity of revenue, right? Because everybody, I want to have $100 million business. I want $100 million in profit. I don't care what the revenue is. I just want a profitable, healthy business because cash is your oxygen.
Do you think that it's because when you get fundraising, you spend frivolously? Like, what is the reason why that would be?
Frivolously is, I don't know, that's a strong adjective for how we spent, but I would, I would say that it's tough not to spend more money than you would normally spend, right? So, and our investors, I think they set it up in a smart way when they said the big round we did was $8 million round initially. And that was after some seed capital and some other things like this. But it was a Series A $8 million round split into tranche A and tranche B. So basically they say, all right, young man, we're going to give you $4 million now. We're going to keep an eye on this bank account. And we're going to give you $4 million in a year once you hit thresholds. And the good news is you don't have to go running around raising money, which is a huge distraction from the business over that 2-year period, which is great. The challenge is you have to hit these requirements. And as an entrepreneur, you set these overly ambitious targets and you don't hit them. And so there's a whole, pre-triggered conversation around that happens. And, but it's hard not to spend money because if you're just sitting on the money, then the investors say, well, what are you doing, man? We gave you this money. You got to put it to use, right? And if you spend it too fast, they say, what are you doing, you dummy? You spent all this money already? So it's this tough thing. I mean, I'm just a kid from Louisiana, right? Like I've never had this much money at my disposal. I never thought I'd have all this, but I had a lot of believers in the brand. And so now I look at it and I'm like, this new company I'm starting, I'm like, everything I'm doing myself. Like the last company was like, we got money, we'll hire an agency for Facebook ads, agency for Google ads, agency for this, agency for that, agency for design. No, I'm not designing the product myself in terms of like the graphic designs, but I'm going like super scrappy and I'm found a designer in 99 Designs, right? I'm learning meta ads myself. And then I'm going to like find pros to come in and do that. But that's kind of how I'm looking at it this way because I think it makes you a lot stronger. And it doesn't mean I'm not going to raise money or I'm not going to like throw more cash at certain things when they need it, but it means I'm going to like do it a lot leaner on the front end.
Yeah, it sounds like you're more interested in actually learning the skills versus just having a pocket full of cash that you throw at things and hope it works.
Yes.
Why did they believe in you?
Ooh.
I mean, that's a lot of money to give somebody that
it is.
Not having a ton of social proof at that point.
Yeah. So I'll give you one story from that. So the private equity group that I met and funded most of this business, which I'm still grateful for to this day, because it was an incredible experience. But, I met them on my own at like a beverage conference. It's called BevNet, right? It happens in Santa Monica and it happens in New York. It's 6 months apart. One's in the summer, one's in the winter. But I go out to Santa Monica, meet these guys there. And I think we had been talking or got introduced somehow. And they're kind of sniffing around all these beverage companies. And we chatted and they were interested, but it wasn't like totally sold, right? It's okay. You sound interesting because a lot of times they're investing in pedigree. Like who's part of the team, who's done this, who's been there. It's like, who are you betting on the Super Bowl, right? Are you going to bet, some up and comer team that's got a bunch of rookies, or are you going to bet on the Chiefs, right? They've been there, done that. Odds are your money's safe with the Chiefs. So, pause there. Things were just kind of going. Well, what changed was I had maneuvered my way into meeting the investment fund from Pepsi at a conference or like a trade show. And they said, we love your name. We might just buy you for the name itself. I'm like, this is great news. We're like $1 million a year in revenue. And I'm like, this is great. And of course he was kind of joking, but I took it serious. And so
I would have, yeah.
I know, right? And he's like, look, the next time you're in Monrovia, California, come out to the office. And I was like, I'll be there next week, actually. And of course, I'm not going there, but Why not go there? So I went and met with them and I sat down and it's this huge conference table and their whole team's in there. And it's like me. It's like the one-man show, right? And I've got my little drink samples and all this. And I'm doing my song and dance, telling them about it. And they're like, entertain us. Tell us more. Enchant us with these startup stories. And so, and then I'm thinking, okay, they're going to buy me. This will be great. And I'm like, okay, well, how can we help you? I'm like, well, I need cash, or maybe you could just buy this and just distribution would be great across the country. Like, oh yeah, you're way too small for that. But like, what else can we do? I'm like, oh man.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
This didn't go as planned.
Where do I go? They're offering. Because I gave them a lot of insights because they don't understand like startup brands and how to, get early users and this kind of stuff. So I'm guessing some of that was helpful. Well, it just turns out that I said, okay, well, I could at least use connections. How about some some gray hair, somebody that's already built a beverage company? And they said, just so happens that we just bought a kombucha company called Kavita for a few $100 million. And the next day, the CEO and founder quit. And so, they were still friendly, but he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. And he's in the next room. You want to meet him? I was like, yeah. So they set up a meeting and they connect us. And this guy just knows kombucha, right? He's just like a great guy. His name is Bill Moses. And he says, okay, protein drinks. Why the hell would I be interested in this? And so I my passion just kind of oozes through, right? I'm very passionate about why I'm into protein drinks and why I think protein is important for everyone's diet. And I'm talking to him about the market and, how to navigate and all this. And he's okay, but you need money. So this is like an hour after him he's a New York guy, right? He's a Wall Street guy. He just like punches you in the face with questions. And I'm just like hitting him back, right? And so he's like, I think I've garnered a little bit of a respect initially. And then he's like, okay, we're going to raise some money. Want to raise some money? I said, yeah, let's do that. So it just so happened that the same private equity group was the main investor in his company. So he said, we're going to get these guys on the phone. So it doesn't sound like they're taking you seriously. So we get them on the phone. Oh, yeah, we'll be doing this. And he said, here's how this is going to go. They're going to put in some money and we're going to get them to agree to this today. I said, dude, I've been talking to them for months. It's like, come on. So the short version of this is he gets them on the phone and goes, all right, here's what's going to happen. We're going to raise some money. Are you guys in or out? And they said, well, I think we're interested. Are you in or are you out? You can either watch us. You can either join and watch it and join us and watch us make a lot of money and join us in this path, or you can watch from the sidelines and miss out on an opportunity because we're going to grow this company and we're going to make a lot of money and you're either in or out. So decide right now. And they're like, okay, we're in. I said, okay, that's great. He's like, told you they'd be in. And I'm like, okay. But it's the pedigree, right? Because he went on and raised money for another company after that, an alcoholic kombucha company. And I think it was something like they were raising money on $100 million valuation pre-revenue. Like crazy, right? But this is when you have the experience, people are a lot more likely to invest and believe in you. And of course, it helps to have a passionate founder that's knowledgeable on the product, but that's like table stakes.
How long were you selling the product before you got that fundraising?
Probably like 3.5, maybe even 4 years.
Okay. So you were very intimate with this product, this brand. You understood it well. So when that guy was like peppering you, you're like, yeah, dude, I've been doing this for 3 years.
All day. Yeah.
Interesting. And then he vetted for you and ultimately that led to fund. Wow. Okay. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I mean, honestly though, like the numbers on that add up in the sense of it took you 3 years of just grinding to get to that point.
Well, and 2 of those were just figuring out how to make a drink, right? Because we're making what's called low acid aseptic drinks. So essentially you're taking protein powder, mixing with water in this giant facility. When you mix that together, if you just make a protein shake and leave it on the counter, bad things happen. Okay. I'm not right away, but leave it out for a day or 2 and let me know how that goes.
Does it curdle?
Yeah, it curdles. It goes bad. It's not good. It turns into like Jell-O. So to make this in the facility, you basically mix it and then you heat it to the level of steam, rapidly cool it, put it in a sterile container and then seal it. And there's a nitrogen blanket inside and that makes it shelf stable, hot or cold for 1.5 years. Boom. Yeah. But it's serious technology that does that, and it requires a lot of cash to go do that. So it took me a while just to get the attention of the production facilities and get some time on their production line, and also raise enough cash. Just like initially, I think I did like my own money, and then I did a personal loan that I guaranteed from the SBA for like $250K just to get the first production out the door.
Were you one of the first people doing this? Because this was what, 10 years ago?
Yeah, it was like Orgain had just come out and they were like a high calorie version. They were like 300 or 400 calories. And I wanted to do like a low calorie, high protein thing. So we were the first ones to do low sugar or no sugar, low calorie, basically just protein, a couple vitamins, some water, just super, super easy, super clean. And there was Muscle Milk out there.
That's what I was just going to ask. Was that the other
Muscle
company?
Milk out there? And Premier had just launched a couple years before that, Premier Protein, right? Yeah. But the reason I started this whole thing was in part was because my nutritionist wouldn't recommend any protein drinks. She's like, okay, this will give you cancer if you drink it. I said, give me cancer from drinking this? Are you kidding me? And she's like, yeah, it's got sucralose, it's got aspartame, it's got all this other garbage in it, artificial flavors and ingredients. Like this stuff is going to destroy your body. Might as well go drink a Coke or something,
Yeah.
Like, okay. So what would you recommend? Oh, you just got to blend your ingredients. And I'm like, come on, man, this is crazy. Everybody's blending their ingredients if they wanted something clean. So I said, why not create something? So then I created Iconic.
And okay, you led me to a perfect segue to kind of where I'm going with this. So were you still working for Shell at the time when this was all happening?
Oh no, this is a fun story. So when I was working at Shell, I was doing my job. I was actually one of the higher performing sales reps, not the best, but not the worst. I would say like upper tier, doing just enough to like stay notable, right? But I wasn't passionate about it. I knew that day one. Like the first meeting I went to was actually here in Austin. And we had like a team meeting for our team as sales team was like basically all the Southeast. We all meet and it's Boresville, man. It is so boring. Okay. They just acquired Rain-X wiper blades. And so we had like a 7 a.m. meeting and they're like talking about wiper blades, but they're trying to get Bob from Cincinnati on the conference call. And Bob doesn't know how to dial in. Bob, are you there? Are you there? We can't hear you. Bob, are you on? It's like pre-Zoom. And I'm just like, oh my God, what's happening here? What's happening here? What did I do? This is a huge mistake. And then during the meeting, I'm like, I've got a suggestion. Why don't we try this? And my boss pulls me out of the room and said, come here. I said, yeah, what's going on? He goes, hey, listen, a lot of ideas. That's great. Not for here, not for Shell.
No.
Okay. Yeah, this company's a dinosaur and we don't need your ideas. We just need you to do some work and be quiet. Okay. If you have ideas, you should just go start your other company.
And you're like,
do your
bingo.
own thing. And I said, okay, I don't know what to do, but I subscribed to Inc. magazine and I was like, I'm going to start reading books and like learning and educating myself on entrepreneurship and find something to do. And so I worked for Shell for 5 years and had a great experience because they taught me like how to, sell and how to market consumer products. They had a bunch of different car care brands like Pennzoil and Quaker State and all these, Rain-X and all this kind of stuff. So I learned, I made money. I was like, my friend calls it cockroach mode because you're just like not spending any money. You're not like buying TVs and cars and all that stuff. You're just like keeping your burn super low so you have money to put into a business. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to have money saved up to do that. So the first business was buying real estate. I started buying rental property where I'm from in Baton Rouge. So I bought like 4 plexes and then a 6-plex, then like a 30-plex. And like I still have that business with a good friend of mine.
Were you living in them when you were buying them?
No. We were just, they were fully occupied luckily, and they were all by LSU, by campus. So we just like renovated them.
You're a slumlord.
Hey, come on.
I'm just saying.
Initially I was because we bought this place and it's one of these where you walk inside and there's like spray paint inside. I'm like, dude, you didn't even want to put it outside. You just put it on the inside of your house. Like you're this kind of psychopath. Okay. And these kids were like punk rockers and they're throwing like rock festivals in the front yard and it's turning everything in mud. They're spray painting everything. And we inherited this tenant, right? These kids are like 16 or 17 or something. And my partner is like, he's like, dude, we should just get a shotgun and go over there and tell them to leave or we'll shoot them. And I said, you need to simmer down a little bit. I know you're a couple Bud Lights in here, but let's just pause on that thought.
That was aggressive.
Let's hold on that and go down a different path of diplomacy here.
Damn.
So we said, hey, listen, their parents are paying the rent. Let's just call the parents and say, and tell them what's up. And I said, hey, listen, like we can't be having concerts in the front yard. Like, this is not going to be a great scenario for you. We're raising the rent. We're cleaning this place up. So we'll let you out of here. We'll give you a deposit back. Just get out of here in the next couple of weeks. It's okay. So they got out of there. We cleaned the place up, renovated everything. Probably too much. My partner's he's better at running the business side of this because he has more self-control with spending. If I'm going to do a project, I'm going to do it right. Like we're going to make sure we get good paint on the walls. We're going to do the floors right. We're going to do this. And guess what? When you're doing rentals and someone's going to move in and potentially tear it up, you don't necessarily treat it like your house and go all out.
Especially college students.
Yeah, especially college students. So I let him run the day-to-day. He's good at it, so I'm thankful for that.
I've actually heard, though, that college students make for the best tenants because they are the most likely to pay their rent because they're afraid of getting in trouble if they don't.
They are. They listen to you a lot. They're a lot more likely to listen to you than adults because we have like another complex in Baton Rouge that's like, 35 units. And these are all people that are like post-grad, a few years older. And there's some wild stories from I've had everything happen. I've had buildings burned down. I've had floods. I've had droughts where the buildings crack in half. I've had, police show up for random things. And it's just crazy, dude. It's unpredictable, but you learn a lot.
That wasn't an insult for the record because I remember in college, obviously we rented a house in college. And I just remember thinking and like running the numbers on the guy that we were renting from and how much he was making from us. Because like, I think we had 7 roommates in a single house and everyone's paying like their own portion of the rent.
Yeah.
I was doing the numbers on it and I was like, this house is not worth anything. And we're paying a lot because there's 7 people in here and everyone's paying for it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, like this is actually an incredible business model if you can get into some like college housing. So
Man, I wish Baton Rouge is a little bit overbuilt. So it's like there's not a ton of margin and you don't get a lot of appreciation. It's performed well for us, but it's not like I've got friends that own property by USC in LA and you can just price gouge out there because there's just not a lot of space and a ton of students, you know?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So let's follow this journey a little bit here.
Yeah.
So you worked for Shell.
Yeah.
You had
Shell.
Had an awesome boss that told you to get the F out of here and do your own thing.
Yeah, I know.
So where did that lead you to next then? Obviously that must have led you to this idea of what you're doing now.
Almost. It actually led me to running a nightclub.
Okay.
Yeah. A little bit of a turn.
Okay.
Segue to nightclub world. It started where a really good friend of mine and I, we started throwing a New Year's party in New Orleans every year because I was living in Louisiana at the time working for Shell. After a brief stint in Houston. And the best thing about Houston, sorry, Houston people, is that it's close to Austin.
Oh, okay. Oh, well said.
That was my favorite part of Houston. Anyway, that's why we're in Austin right now. So, we started throwing this party because all of our friends were doing boring stuff for New Year's. And the people from Houston, all these people were coming into New Orleans wanting for something to do. And we ended up on like a party bus, like stuck on this bus with a bunch of dudes trying to get to Bourbon Street to meet up with a bunch of women at at midnight. And I'm like, this is awful. This could be so much better, but it's not. So the next year I threw a party with a buddy of mine and like 300 people showed up. Okay. I said, okay, kind of got something here. And people are like, you got to do it again. You got to do it. Well, fast forward a few years, 8 years later, it grew to 2,000 people. We had the biggest New Year's party in Louisiana. All right.
Where did you host 2,000 people?
We rented out the Contemporary Art Center. So it's a big art museum in New Orleans. And it's like basically a huge warehouse. So we had inside, outside. We had live art, people like swinging from the ceilings, doing like
some like Cirque du Soleil kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah. So that was a fun experience. Just throwing those parties. We did some other events. We did an event on Lake Travis here for the 4th of July. We rented like Large Marge, the party barge.
Nice.
The Ark, like
Nice.
the biggest ones out there.
Yes.
And that was. I mean, I'm just happy everybody survived that. Honestly.
How do you feel about the event industry now? Like, do you like it? Good, bad, profit margins?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm glad I wasn't in it going into the pandemic because everybody just got crushed. Sure. I mean, there's very few people that survived that. But post-pandemic, it's like almost stronger than it once was because everybody's hungry to go to live events again. There's all these wellness conferences and stuff. So I think you can make money. It is a low margin game. You know, it's challenging to build something that you really make money in. And that's what I found because when you're running these parties, like people are paying $200 to go to a New Year's party. Oh my God, you must be making so much money. No, dude, we're making pennies because half that 50% goes to the venue. Okay. You got to pay for, the booze, you got to pay for the food, you got to pay to rent the space, you got to pay to clean the space, you got to pay liability, all this kind of stuff. And then you got to pay for staff, you got to pay for all these other things, entertainment. And so the slice of profit gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then for the next year, you got to pay everything like up front. It's like a wedding or something. You got to put down deposits on everything, right? Everybody wants to get paid early. There's a lot of cash tied up in the business. And so I thought, why don't we just own a venue? That's a smart move, right? So at this point at Shell, I'm like doing my day job, 40 plus hours a week. Plus I've got rental property. Plus I've got the New Year's party. Plus we're doing other events. And I got to the point where I work from home, but I go into the office sometimes and they'd be like, hey man, when's the next party? And I'm like, shh, stop it. Like, wait, do you have any rentals open? I was like, shh, stop. And I realized, you know what, man, I got other stuff going. It wasn't enough to replace the income, but let me just like focus on this. So I quit Shell. My boss at the time was shocked. I thought you were going to retire here and all this. But you
retire here. Wow.
I know. You get to this point where you're just like so tired of it. And a lot of times people quit because of their boss. And at that point I had a boss that, I mean, he's great for that company. I don't know if he's still there or not, but like, I just did not get along with him. He's a super by the book guy. And just like, he was like, kind of like Office Space, do your TPS reports. He was like, your numbers are great. You're top of the sales team, but like, you really need to focus on your route map. Like, I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? He's like, oh, you need to track all the places you're going and putting into our CRM system in advance. So we know where you're. I said, shut up. I'm doing the work.
Yeah.
I'm performing.
We're getting paid.
You want me to do the admin stuff or you want me to sell? Like, I can't do both.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, I was so over it. And then finally I was like, okay, I just got to quit. So I quit. And then there was a guy that had a venue in New Orleans. And he said, hey, listen, like I want to get out of this venue business, but we host corporate events. We host New Year's parties. We host all these different things, but it's primarily a nightclub on the weekends, unless they have some other event they're doing. So I was like, okay, this could be interesting. But he's like, look, I'll pay you to manage it. And you can just basically run it. You can see the books. And if you like it, you can just buy the business. I said, okay, this is like a rent to own type of deal. So I did it, and after like 3 months, I said, dude, this is awful. This is because you're working every weekend, every night. Honestly, it's like a lower maturity level. I mean, people are calling me. I'm coming from corporate America, right? People are calling me at this nightclub, like that work there. Oh man, like I got like another flat tire. And like I said, dude, you had that yesterday. What are you talking about? Just come to work. I don't care, really, just get here. And like people are just, it's just like, the people are like hooking up at work or drinking booze. Like, what are you doing? I said, what's wrong with this? Like, what do you mean, what's wrong with this? This is a question you have? This is a real question from an adult? I was like, I can't do this. And they were just like running super low on money. And it was a whole, I was like, I don't want to run this life. This is a whole life. I enjoy going, but I don't want to be like doing this day to day. So then I think I actually got fired because they were out of money. They're like, hey, listen, so we're about to do payroll and we don't have any money. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Unless you want to buy the place. I said, I don't want to buy this. This is a horrible business.
You have no money.
You have no money. You can't even pay anyone. What's to buy? Like, you just give it to me, I guess. But I'm inheriting all these problems. So I like went on unemployment for the summer, and I was just like, oh man, it was kind of a dark time. And then I had this idea for a protein drink, and I'll tell you the short version of how this came out was basically I had, at the same time as all this going on, especially from working in corporate America and doing all these dinners, I had high cholesterol, acid reflux, all these problems, even though I was working out all the time. It's from the diet, right? I'm eating like, Tex-Mex and, steaks and all this kind of stuff every night, and eating Italian food. And I went to a doctor, and the doctor says, here's 2 pills, one for this and one for that. Take these every day. Yeah. And I'm like late 20s. I'm like, dude, this is crazy. Why should I take pills every day for acid reflux and high cholesterol? I'm on statin, and I'm on some kind of, acid reflux thing.
In your 20s?
In my 20s, yeah. And then, like, nothing came up around the diet because, like, I learned doctors aren't really educated on nutrition, right? They could take like one course, and that's it out of 4 years. Crazy. And so I, went to a dietitian that was a friend of a friend, and I said, hey, look, like, I think there's a better way, but I'm not sure. And she said, oh yeah, you just got to clean up your diet. Less sugar, less fat, more protein. And okay, what would you recommend? And that's the story I told you earlier around. She just wouldn't recommend any of these protein drinks. I said, why don't you help me create one? She said, I don't know who you are. What are you, some beverage guy? No. How do you know how to do this? I don't know. I'll figure it out. Yeah. And so that was the start of Iconic. And then I joined this business incubator in New Orleans called Idea Village. And the program is like, hey, we'll get you from like idea to like a sample in 6 months, or, get your business going. And so I did that. And that was the kind of genesis of Iconic. I was like, okay, this sounds fun. I'll do this. How hard can it be?
Where did you pick up your sales chops?
It was early on. I would say it was probably when I was like 12. I started I had a lawn business where I was like selling lawn services in my neighborhood, just like getting people to like pay me $20 or $30 to cut their grass. And now I think I'm like, I cut this huge yard in the middle of summer in Louisiana for $20. What an idiot. Mm-hmm. Of course they were happy to pay me.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like this kid, and I was like, took it seriously. I was like edging everything. I would spend like 4 hours on a lawn. I was just like out there, like it was like perfect, right?
Do you have perfectionism nature in you?
Oh, definitely. Okay. Big time. Yeah. Which doesn't serve you well in the lawn care business.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a high ROI on that. It's not there. But I did that. And then I worked for my dad as a CPA. And so he had all these clients that are small business owners. And one of them had a retail store that sold Christmas ornaments all year round. Don't ask me who goes there, but people go. And so I was there. And I learned like people are looking for stuff, help them. And then part of helping people is sales, right? You're like, okay, what about this? And what about this? You need this? Okay, cool. So I kind of like learned sales early on. And then when I was in college, I wanted to go skiing. And there was this group that put on a ski trip, a company out of Southern California. And I went the first year and just paid to win. Okay, it was super fun. First time I ever saw snow. I was 18 years old, right? Had a blast. And I said, maybe I could like help organize this. And I was in a fraternity. So I was like, I'll organize it for my group. And so I did that, but part of that is sales, right? You're going to sell trips. And if you sell 15 trips, you could do it for free. So I was like, okay, this is cool. Well, me and a few friends grew that trip from like 300 people to 2,000 people.
Whoa.
Yeah. So we had like one of the biggest ski trips in the country that was at LSU with kids that had never seen snow before.
How were you selling it? Why were people buying it?
We just made it cool. That's when I learned the power of cool and like FOMO. Right? As we say now, it's like people, like it became such a thing. Everybody wanted to go on the ski trip. and everybody's talking about it. It was like the place to be in your off time in between. It was like that weird period between Christmas and when you start school, early January in college. So we always did it early January, and people just loved it, man. It was a banging deal. It was like $600 or something, and you just cover your travel and you get lift passes for like 3 or 4 days, and there was like concerts and parties, and everything was like prepackaged, lined up, ready to go.
How would you replicate something like that in terms of like making something cool? Because I hopefully there's like a lesson in there of like other people or brands that they could take away from that. Because I think it's true. I think there is a degree of like people want something that like feels cool or trendy or what's going on in the world. Like, how would you do that?
Well, it's kind of like, I'll reference the bar industry, right? When you see a line at a bar, you're like, what's going on here, right? A lot of times it's the staff that pulls people in. They can have a cool bar concept, but ultimately it's like, oh, I know this bartender, I know somebody working there, I know the manager, I know the owner, or something like this. And it was like the people are like an empty place doesn't pull anybody inside. In modern day, it's influencers, right? It's like, I was just, Eric Hyndman, I think it was on the show too. And I ran into him at Sun Life over here, and we were catching up, and, he had a conference call he was jumping on with some new brand. And that's a great example, right? Because he's just like a machine pumping out content, and he's a great ambassador. And so that's kind of the modern version of, hey, how do you make things cool? It's like word of mouth. Word of mouth always wins, whether it's like, you're running a pyramid scheme and you're doing multi-level marketing, and you've got everybody's buying from a friend of a friend, or you're buying from an influencer, or you're buying from whoever else. It's all kind of like, who do I believe? And I think the top tier of, there was a brand a couple years ago that launched that everybody. They had like, it was like LeBron, they had Arnold, they had all these people pushing it. Like nothing happened. Okay. Ladder, I think was it. Supplement brand, but they had all this hype around it, all these people, and they're all invested in it, and like nothing happened. Nobody bought it, right? Because I think the challenge is if you get too high level, you get like the Tom Brady's and the LeBrons and all these people, they're involved with so many brands. As a consumer, you're like, do they really drink this? Like, is Shaq driving a Buick? We all know Shaq's just not driving a Buick every day, right? So like, is Shaq increasing Buick sales? Probably not.
That makes sense. How did you do that with Iconic then? So was that something that you went into thinking about when you were starting this brand? Like one, is that like how you landed on the name? And then two, how did you make it cool from the get-go?
Yeah, I would say the name came from a big whiteboard session. We're in this room, and there's all the walls are whiteboards. So we're just kind of come up with names, and it's so hard to come up with a name and consumer products, especially supplements, beverages, all this kind of, because everything's taken. It's so easy to make one of these things. Everybody had an energy drink idea after Red Bull and Monster. So we said, let's figure out what to create, but everything's trademarked. And so I started thinking about, okay, let's zoom out and figure out subjective and objective terms. And I would encourage anybody that's trying to think of a name for a product to go through this exercise. So you basically want a bunch of white space, and you say, okay, what are the like objective words that go with this product, right? And we say, this is a water bottle, right? It holds water. It's metal. It's 24 ounces or something, right? And then you come up with subjective words like a name tree that come off of those objective words. And then it starts to give you ideas, and you go words off of words off of words off of words, right? And so at the end of the day, you have this huge tree of words that starts to give you directional ideas. And for us, I always had this vision of iconography, of like, I want to be super clear with what this product is for, and there needs to be icons that show what it's for. And that was one of the words. And we said, what about like iconic tonics, iconic? And we just trimmed it down to iconic. And it was available. I was like, dude, this is crazy. No one's trademarked this.
Yeah.
And so I trademarked it, and I was shocked to be able to get it. And then making it cool part, I don't think I did enough of that. If I could be self-critical, I would go back and say, look, focus on like killer marketing. Like, you're a marketing machine, and like sales is like a distant second, right? I'm like had way more experience in sales. So I was like, oh, I want to get this in all the retailers, right? Which is kind of an eco play in hindsight. Like, I want to be in Whole Foods. I want to be in Target. I want to be in Walmart. I want to be in all these stores, HEB, Central Market. They were some of our first customers. And I got in. I like did it. I got in HEB, and I got in Walmart, and I got in Target, and I got in Whole Foods. It was in 10,000 stores across the country. Okay. And
can I pause you for a second?
Yeah.
How would you have done it differently if you went with it more of a marketing approach versus a sales approach?
Great question. The difference is, if you have killer marketing, those stores are calling me. Rather than me trying to go sales calls and pitch, you're the buyer for Target, here's why you need. I had 3 pitches at Target. I had seven years it took me to get into Whole Foods. right? And eventually the guy says, dude, he's like, all right. She said, why is this not here? Like, you're the number one product in the protein category. Like, how do we not? I said, great question. Why don't you have it? And so ultimately the data got me in, right? But if I were to go back and say, okay, let me build this brand online, which I'll do with this next brand, is like, let me build it online. Let me build a lot of energy around it. Let me build the cool factor and figure out like product market fit and really build that word of mouth marketing, and then go out and like let the retailers come to me. Like Element's a great example of that. They're doing like a few $100 million in sales. They're not even touching retail yet. They're just starting to. But the retailers are like, please give us this product.
Do you think it's going back to your original point, tapping into other people that are rather have influence or have audiences and getting the product in their hands to basically talk about it?
Yeah, and how do you build a cult?
Sure.
Right? How do you build that cult following? Part of that's influence. Part of it's just like doing cool stuff on your own. Yeah.
I mean, that's where Red Bull crushed. Like they were never really a drink per se. They're more a brand than anything ever.
Yes.
So I think there's a lot to be learned from that. I mean, it was the same thing with Gymshark, right? Gymshark just like got clothing on sexy people essentially at the end of the day.
Sure.
And people are like, I want to look like that. And it's like, well, you got to get fit first. But most people skip that step. But
yeah, I just want to look cool.
Yeah. Interesting. I like that. I just had a conversation with a guy last week that was just on the show, and he's another big sales guy. And he was talking out. We were talking about how like it's like a pendulum, is that if you have a really strong brand, which is more or less marketing, you have to do way less lifting in the sales space versus if you have a weak brand and you don't have very much marketing, you have to push way harder into sales. Ideally, if you have both, you're pretty much unstoppable. But
totally. Yeah, and I did a lot of interviewing of salespeople while I was at Iconic, and one of the guys, I got to the point where I was just grilling people because I had a few, I wouldn't say they were bad hires, but like I made the mistake of hiring someone that just wasn't a good fit for the role. And so I was just like going through tons and tons of questions. And this one guy finally just gives up, and he's going for a sales position with us. He says, look, man, honestly, and he was working for Vital Proteins. And he says, honestly, dude, this product sells itself. Like the marketing crushes. Like I'm just kind of filling orders. And I was like, bingo.
Yeah.
Thank you for the honesty.
Yeah, he gets it.
Not hired.
Yeah.
I'm going to go hire a marketing person now.
Yeah. It's so true though, man. I mean, Seth Godin talks about that all the time, right? I mean, he's one of the guys that originally just talked about the idea of push marketing versus pull marketing. How like it used to be very push marketing. It used to be like, I just wrote a post about this, is how like your forms of marketing used to be newspapers, radio, and television.
Yeah.
And it was like, if you could get products in front of people on those platforms, you generally win. But now it's like with social media of like TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and blogs and influencers and email marketing and paid advertisements, it's like, it's a very different game.
Yeah.
The game now is like, how can you attract people to you as opposed to like trying to push products in front of them. The only companies that I feel like are still pushing really hard are like giant corporate companies, whether it's like your automobile company or whatever the case. But if you're a brand new brand like you are, the game is pull, not push.
And the retailers love that. I mean, that was the biggest swing in 10 years of selling into retail, was it went from, okay, what can you do for me, right? And it's still kind of that, right? In the sense of like, hey, it shifted from like, what programs can you run, what promotions can you run, and blah, blah, blah in our store, what flyers can you pay for or whatever, to how are you going to bring more people in our store? How are you going to be a destination item? What are you doing on TikTok to pull people in, right?
I love that. So you eventually moved from Louisiana to California.
Yeah.
To pursue this business, did a bunch of pitching, grew this company to, how big are you guys now?
Yeah, so I sold my stake in the company last year, but the company grew. We actually grew up to about 10,000 stores, and we were cranking at a nice level of revenue. The challenge with the business was it kind of gobbles cash, And what I mean by that is the cash cycle in retail is rough. So, most of your listeners might be familiar with Amazon Prime, right? Everybody's getting Amazon Prime now. Well, if you go to Whole Foods, you get the extra 10% off, right? And then Whole Foods, you can see all the yellow tags of things they're running deals on. And I do think it's since the Amazon acquisition, it's much more customer friendly in terms of like better deals, right? It's not as expensive as it once was. If you play the deal game, because every brand has to run a deal once a quarter at Whole Foods to be on the shelf, right? Unless you're like an orange or something, right? The actual packaged goods, you got to play the deal game. And so if your brand that you like to buy is going to be running a deal once a quarter, and they got to go super deep on a deal, like buy one, get one free, or like 50% off once a year, and you can throw it in the freezer or the pantry, you can go ham on that, and you can get way better deals than at like a Walmart or something like that if you're playing that game. So the challenge for a brand is if I'm the brand and you're Whole Foods, first you say, cool, we want to take your product. Then I say, okay, how do we do this? You say, you got to sell to this distributor over here. Oh, I didn't know he was involved. Yeah. You got to sell to him first. And once he carries it, then they'll put it in our store, right? I say, okay, how do I get my money? Well, we're going to pay him and then they pay you, right? Okay. But then I have to run production, right? So let's zoom out. I got to go buy the ingredients, right? The production facility isn't going to schedule my production until the ingredients and the labels are on site. Once they're on site, let's just say that's 60 days of cash gone. That's all there. Then they put you on the production schedule. That happens in 30 days, right? So now we're 90 days into that cash being held up, right? Then it's produced and there's a 2-week hold time. Then it's got to get shipped to your warehouse, right? We have a third-party warehouse it gets shipped to. The warehouse has to receive it, tally it up, and then start shipping it out once they have orders placed, right? Once they have orders, that doesn't mean it's just going right out. So let's say all that is 6 months, okay? Then it goes to the warehouse, right? And these warehouses, they're smart, right? They're going to buy what's called deal to deal. So they're going to say, oh, you're running a promotion next month? Okay, we don't need any this month. We'll just wait till next month. And then they overbuy for the next month because at Whole Foods, let's say your product is running 25% off plus Amazon Prime 10% off. So you're at 35% off. So you got 35% off. Well, the distributor knows if I just stock up on this stuff now, I'll get it at a lower price because they're buying it at the deal price. So they buy 90 days worth of inventory and you're selling, most of your 80% of your sales are on deal. Okay. So if you don't have a ton of margin, let's say our product margin was like 40%, right? So you're getting down to single digits or negative. So we're losing money in stores, right? Because what happens is 9 months later, you get your cash, but that check that you send to UNFI that they send to me, which is the distributor, I get a small portion of that. Oh, because there were damages, there were allowances. Oh, and you did the Amazon Prime. Well, yeah, because you made me do the Amazon Prime 10% off. Okay. Well, yeah, but we got to charge you because we got a process fee for that. Oh my God. So there's more fees for the fees, right? And so you have all these fees. So let's just say I bill you $500,000 and I get like $200,000 back. Okay. So this is kind of the retail game. And so if you have 80% plus product margin, you're good to go. I do some coaching for brands right now that want to scale up to like 10 million plus or even get up to 1 million. And I say, look, I wouldn't touch retail unless you have 80% product margin. Damn. 80% just to kind of scrape through. And so your cash cycle being 9 to 12 months, I'm like, dude, this is for the birds. This is crazy. And so we had one investor that was still funding a bunch of the cash. This guy, one of our original investors out of New Orleans. And so he wound up buying the business and I said, look, let's scale it down. Let's pull it out of retail. It's unprofitable. Let's just sell it online and pull back on marketing. And then this thing will be profitable. And so that's what it is now. It's like a few person operation. So on the high end, it was like 30 people. Now it's 2 people. So it's just online, but it's a highly profitable only online business.
So you have completely pulled out of retail stores?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, there were some we were doing. I love seeing the product in like a H-E-B or Whole Foods or Central Market or something like that. But the challenge was with all the retail fees. And look, I get it. These stores, they want to give a great deal to the customer. So you got to play ball on all these deals. But when your product margin is only 40%, it's just hard to make profit. Yeah.
So after 10 years of that experience and realizing that retail is probably not the initial route to go, how are you going to do things moving forward differently with this next company?
Online only. You want to buy it in the store? Too bad. Not happening. Yeah. So online only. It's like, let me figure out how to get that product market fit and really kind of get a product and a brand that resonates with customers, that solves a problem.
How do you figure that out?
Well, I just think about, what are people coming to me for? Like friends, family, friends of friends. Like, what do I get the most inbound, interest for? And lately it's been, I'm just a nerd for all things longevity. We were talking before this, and I was saying that I did one of these biological age tests. And I'm thinking, I'm pretty healthy, protein drink founder, work out a lot. Maybe you didn't hear. And I do my age test and I'm 47. Like, what? 40? Y'all, I'm not 47. Let me just let you in on a secret. I'm now 41. At the time I took it, I was 40. So I'm like, I'm 7 years older. What the hell? So I get connected to the guy that runs a testing company. I said, what's going on, man? He says, well, Do you fly a lot? I said, yeah, I fly all the time. I would take probably like 60 flights a year or something, you know, because I was flying around doing sales and stuff all these years, and everything's online now for the business, so I travel. And he said, dude, UV exposure is crushing you. You're
Really?
flying in the middle of the day, getting high UV exposure. It's just crushing your DNA. Okay. Yeah. It's very inflammatory. It's disruptive to your sleep. Sleep is a big thing with longevity.
So
right?
hold on.
Yeah.
This is through the plane. So like you're high.
Yeah.
In
The metal's not like protecting you.
Okay.
FYI,
So you're high in the sky. You're closer to the sun.
Yeah.
So you're getting more UVs. And what if you're on the ground? Does that change things?
So if you're on the ground, it's kind of like if you go to the Caribbean and you're out in the sun versus you're in Nebraska in the sun, right?
Okay.
Like the people there have more melanin in their skin typically versus Nebraska because like the UV is lower. The UV exposure is lower. Okay. So if you're elevated, you're going to get more UV exposure because you're closer to the sun. Or if you're closer to the equator, you're closer to the sun as well. So when you're flying, it's like being on top of a mountain. You know, when you go skiing, you're like, oh, it's a beautiful day. And then you come back and you're just like burned. You have all this, you know, sunburn on your face if you don't put sunblock on. And it's because you're at elevation. So it's kind of the same thing up there. It's not to say you're going to need a sunburn sitting on the plane, but pilots and flight crew are at a much higher risk of cancer, skin cancer, and all different types of cancer because they're getting like more ultraviolet exposure in the upper atmosphere. There's less protection from these. It's like in Australia, there's a hole in the ozone layer, and everybody's like, you know, it's higher rates of cancer. So it's kind of the same thing. So I'm thinking, okay, so now I'm flying more in low UV time. So like I'm flying out today actually, and I have a flight at 4:30. Okay. By the time we take off, the peak is like around noon. So you don't want to be in the air around noon, ideally. And when I do, I have a whole protocol I take when I travel of a bunch of antioxidants and things like this I take. And also, let's be real. I was living in Louisiana for 30 years. So that's a lot of fried food covered in cream sauce. Okay. And your boy was eating a lot of Frosted Flakes growing up. Okay. So yeah, not great for longevity and all this kind of stuff.
I've never heard that. That's interesting. I'm just reflecting on myself right now because I have this disgusting habit of I run in the heat of the day.
Oh.
And so like very exposed to UV.
Yeah.
I don't fly very often though. I personally actually don't like travel that much.
Okay.
It's just like the rigmarole of it. Like I've heard you talk about how like going somewhere and staying for a while.
Yeah.
That appeals to me.
Yeah.
But like the going all over the place, I hate it.
Yeah, it's a lot.
But I don't fly a lot, so I'm like maybe I'm protected there. But I'm just thinking of like I run in the dick hot of the day. And so
I mean, it's true, man. They actually have it on Apple Weather. If you scroll down, no one ever scrolls down. They're just looking at the top. Scroll down. There's a UV index, and I just avoid the peak. Like, why would I do that? I'll run, you know, earlier in the day or later in the day, and I still get to be outside, and I still get benefits from the sun. You do want to get the vitamin D, right? And you can still get that later in the day. You don't have to have the peak UV, but that's just like crushing your skin and, you know, your DNA and all this stuff.
Interesting. I did a weird test where it was a skin deal where he had this like really fancy like multi-$1,000 machine.
Yeah.
And he like put it on my palm, I think it was, and then it like reads from a cellular level. It like sends a light into your skin. Have you seen these?
No.
So it sends like a light into your skin and it can tell you like how cellular healthy you are, I guess.
Oh wow. Okay.
Not to toot my own horn, but I was like in the 1%, and I was like, oh yeah, awesome. But
Trophy for this guy.
I know, but yeah, I'd be curious to do the one you're talking about though. So it's a saliva test, you said?
Yeah, there's the one I've been using recently is called True Me. There's one I think called like True Age or something. There's a few of these tests. If you just look biological test company out there, I'm not associated with any of them, but you know, most of them are saliva tests, and you're just spitting on a piece of paper and sending it in, and you know, it's still early days. Like I've got a friend that does like research in this space, and he admits, he's like, look, man, it's still early days, and some of these guys that are the longevity athletes, as they're becoming known now, they're like kind of manipulating the test, so they're just figuring out like what they can do that'll get the score for that test down. So it's still like early days for the science, but I think directionally it's accurate because I don't see people that look like super unhealthy and are morbidly obese scoring super low on these things, you know?
So moving forward with this new brand, I'd be curious to know is like, where does personal branding play into all this now? Because obviously with the previous company, it was more about like pushing the sales and you got some funding. Are you tackling this more with a personal branding approach then? Or?
Yeah, you know, I've looked at creating and I have been working on my personal brand for the last couple of years because I think it matters. People want to hear the founder story. But then you look at Red Bull, which you mentioned earlier. That founder was well known as a recluse. He didn't want his photo taken anywhere. He didn't want to be seen. He was always all about the brand. and he worked, I think, for Unilever for a number of years before that. And so he understood like the power of a brand and making it all about the brand. So that's one side of it. And another side is like, you have people that like, people are buying the brand, like Mr. Beast. Like no one's buying burgers, they're buying Mr. Beast. Okay. So it's like you have two extremes. I think I'm somewhere in the middle because I don't see myself becoming like a Mr. Beast, and I'm not like a recluse. So I'm not on the other side of Red Bull. But I think like the brand needs to be able to stand on its own. It needs to be a strong brand versus just like, it's just the founder. I think I want to have like an army of influence. So for me, it's like building a community of people that have influence, whether that's big or small. I think it's a mix, and just getting those people behind the brand itself.
Have you thought about who you would initially want to start connecting with or pulling into this brand or representing this brand? And if you'd have, how would you go about connecting with them?
Yeah, for this, it's like this new thing I'm working on. It's longevity, right? So I think about like, what are people, when you said like, hey, how do you come up with ideas for stuff, and how do you think about that? Well, for me, it's like, what are people coming to me for? And a lot of people come to me and say, okay, like, especially when I go back to Louisiana, we have like a Christmas lunch with some of my buddies, and one of my friends like last year says, we're just sitting across from each other, he's having a cocktail, and I don't even drink anymore, so I'm sitting there just drinking like my water, right? My like spring water. And he looks at me and he goes, dude, where did I go wrong? He's just looking at me. He's just like, what happened? Like, what are you doing so differently than me? And I said, there's a list of things, my friend.
How much time do you have?
And he's like, well, can you just tell me what supplements to take?
Oh, God.
And it always goes back to what supplements you
Yes.
take, right? And I just fought it for so long. And then eventually I said, you know what? There are supplements that I take that do help with aging, but it's part of a bigger protocol. So for me, supplements are kind of the Trojan horse, because I want to build a lifestyle brand that's more about lifestyle education, because it's like there's all these pillars, right, that are important for longevity. And like sleep is one of the most important ones. I'm not selling sleep. But what I'm selling is like, I want to make the education free, okay? Because I'm a big believer in like impact. So how can I educate people on how to live healthier longer? And then also like, if they want to buy a supplement, I have that too, because it's a pain in the ass. I have this little like, pill pack I carry around, and I gobble up all these pills every day. There's like, I don't know, 30 pills in here. So I eat all this because it's stuff that I can't get naturally in my diet. Some of them are like, compounds that do help repair your DNA. And some of it's stuff that I could get, but I don't get, like fish oil or something like this, right?
My girlfriend would never be able to do that.
No.
So she has like a resistance to swallowing pills for whatever reason.
Okay.
And so we did some blood work once, and sorry to cut you off, but
Yeah.
we did some blood work, and it's one of those things where like they look at your blood work and then they send you supplements based on what your
Yeah.
lab works get. And they sent us our pills, and it was so bad. She literally had to like break open the pills
No.
and like put them into a drink, like each one of them individually, and
Yeah.
like figure out a way to not make it taste like horrible just to get them down, because she just can't swallow pills. So it's like this side path for anybody that like is looking for a business idea. Figure out a way to take pills that don't require you to take pills, and I think you have a bunch of customers. But anyways.
That's what this is.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is it just like a powder or what?
It's a powder.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's what I'm doing, because I call it pill fatigue. A lot of my friends that do take pills, they're just over it.
Yeah.
One of my friends, he's kind of a conspiracy theorist, right? He's like, what about all these capsules, all this plastic?
God.
I said, pause, dude. They're not made of plastic. It's like, vegetable glycerin or something, right? It's like, okay, but still, where does it all go? And I was like, well, let me look that up and confirm. But yeah, your stomach acid definitely destroys it, like this little pill capsule. But a lot of people, they just don't want to take all these pills every day, which I get. I'm a crazy person, so I do. But I'm like, there's got to be an easier way. And so that's what I thought. Okay, let me just turn this into a powder, like an everyday, take it every day, daily longevity mix. You blend it with water, stir it around, drink it, done deal. So it's like 20 plus ingredients. So instead of taking 20 pills and spending $400 a month like I do, you spend $100 a month, and it's like all in one. And I've been able to reduce my biological age from 47 to 36.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So that's like, a lot of this is supplementation, and a lot of it's lifestyle. So the idea is like, I'm not trying to say only take a supplement. Like, I'm not a fan of only taking supplements. This is like one small piece. Let's say it's 10% of the puzzle. But if I can use this to help educate people on how to modify their lifestyle and help them be accountable and be a part of a community that's all about like living healthier longer. Because I always do this thing like let's just say, I'll ask you, like, how old do you want to live?
At least over 100.
Okay. So like what age?
For like an exact number?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like, let's say 110.
Okay. And what if you could stay in this physical condition and like your brain's intact? How long would you want to live just like this? If you're like pausing in this body.
I mean, forever.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
And so the idea is like, I'm not saying that I can do this now, but one of my goals in life is to figure out how to end aging, because aging is a disease. Diseases can be treated. So it's like somebody that says, I want to cure cancer. Oh my God, that's crazy. Well, guess what? One day it's going to be cured. And so I don't know if it's going to be me, but I'm working on finding ways now to reduce the impact of aging. And ultimately, I think we can cure aging. So I don't know if it's going to happen in our lifetime, but I think we can make a big dent in it. And I think we can help people live a lot healthier longer. And then when I rephrase that in that same way that I did with you, people go from typically 80. They imagine this 80-year-old decrepit person in modern day USA. And they say, oh, I want to live well over 100. I want to live to 150 or something, right? Mm. And so when you kind of like change that mindset, people are willing to do it. So that's the idea with this brand, is like calling it Youth RX, the prescription for youth.
Ooh, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, sexy. Yeah. So the idea is like how to create products that really are impactful for people, but also pair with education and then testing. So the third component is testing, so that we partner with third-party labs to do your biological age test or to do a nutrient analysis in your blood or something like this. But really kind of like, because I'm not saying everybody should have X, Y, and Z supplements, but if you're low on something or your age is too high, then like, why not take something?
Do you see the product being like a custom powders for people, or do you see it being more like these are the most effective things that somebody can take?
I want to keep it simple. I want to keep it like, what can I create that's good for everybody?
Yeah.
Like, so the stack of nutrients we have in here is something that's beneficial for basically everyone. You could totally go the custom route, but I think it's like, that's a whole nother level of intricacy that it's going to cost a little bit more to do just like custom blending for everybody. So I'm not saying I wouldn't do it down the road, but I wanted to do something that was applicable for everybody.
What's like the top 3
of ingredients?
Yeah.
We've got spermidine, we've got NR, which is a popular one that's replacing. It's like, the idea is like, what are NAD plus boosters? And like NMN is a popular one for a while, but it's now like banned in the US. Yeah, thanks, David Sinclair. Yeah.
Why did they ban it?
Because they're turning it into a pharmaceutical, and when things are getting turned into a pharmaceutical, then the FDA in their wise, wisdom say like, oh, we should just ban it while we're turning this into a supplement.
So they can make money on it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Classic.
So the FDA and pharma are like super connected, right? It's like, oh, like all these ex-heads of the FDA are now on pharma boards, and all these pharma boards, like, what? Okay.
Classic.
I know. I can't wait to see if Kennedy, as part of this whole, the next administration, he's talking a big game about shaking things up, so we'll see if things actually change. But, Big Pharma funds both parties. So it's like, it's hard to see a lot of change happening there. But yeah, so I found, ingredients that are not banned, like NR, like spermidine, like calcium alpha ketoglutarate. And then we've got glycine in here, and also some creatine as well. So there's a stack of 20 ingredients, but those are kind of like the top 4 or 5 ingredients that really drive the most impact. And the way I looked at it is I talked to some of the labs that do the testing and figured out like, and also people that, publicize on social media that, hey, I take this test and I lowered my age, and I'm running the data analysis myself on what's driving the age. So what lifestyle behaviors are driving lower age and lower pace of aging, and also, what supplements are they taking? And rather than buy all these things separately, why not just combine it all into one? So that's the vision here.
The only ones I've ever really consistently taken, just based on other like coaches and people in the space that I've talked to, is literally been like creatine, magnesium, and then I flirted with like boron for a while.
Yeah.
Somebody got me into that one for T levels for a little bit.
Yeah.
But other than
Did
that,
it work?
I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't do any sort of like before and afters. I just know like from the research, like for sure the first 2, like in terms of like creatine and magnesium, it's pretty conclusive. Like most people, almost everybody should be taking those for the most part.
Yeah.
But agreed. In terms of boron, I don't know.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah. I looked at creating a T boosting product as well, because I was able to like raise my T levels significantly with not only lifestyle but primarily supplementation, and boron, zinc, some of the basics, some of these other ones that you've heard about, Fredosia, Agrestis, this other kind of stuff. But like, I think that's maybe down the road. Yeah.
I know you just went to a big fancy longevity conference
I know, I love these things.
with with a whole bunch of longevity dorks.
Yeah.
Can you maybe give people the punchline from what you took away from this, from like some of the most brilliant minds in the space?
I've been to 4 or 5 of these things, and the biggest one had everybody. It was like a highlight reel of everything you see on Instagram. It was like, a mix of Andrew Huberman, Gabrielle Lyons, Brian Johnson. I went to Dave Asprey's thing. I've been to all these things, right? And net, because some people were like pro plant, some people were carnivores, in between. I always look for the common denominators. Number 1, sleep. Sleep is incredibly impactful in longevity. Getting quality sleep is oftentimes underrated. The second one is avoiding sugar. Okay, so added sugar, not from like fruits and stuff necessarily, but like if you're adding a lot of sugar, or eating stuff that's got sugar in it, and processed food, kills you. Big killer. Okay, so it's like better sleep, cutting out sugar and added sugar specifically, or doing it sparingly. And then another one was resistance training. Okay. Like resistance training, closely paired with that is like good cardio shape. So there's kind of mixed, stances on static cardio versus sprint cardio in terms of like, getting good HRV and all this kind of stuff. But you got like a Mark Sisson that's that's a big fan of like sprint training, right? And like that kind of conditioning. And he's very anti-static training. And you've got some people like Peter Attia that's like, oh, like go row to Catalina Island, once a month or something, cause he's like, he does, some of these adventure races and things like that. But,
What's your takeaway from that?
I do a mix. For me, it's like, when I look at the areas of the world where people are living the longest, and I think some of the blue zone stuff is kind of phony and some of it's accurate. But when I look at where there's, we'll call it healthy old people, they are walking a ton. They have a low stress lifestyle. They seem to be getting good sleep, and they're eating pretty clean, typically kind of like a Mediterranean style diet. So that's kind of how I look at living my life. And it seems to work for those people. So for me, it's like on the cardio front, I want to get probably 10 to 12,000 steps a day. So it's like walking wherever I can. And then I get some resistance training in 5 days a week, and I want to get some mobility, like a yoga or something like this, and at least once a week, ideally more. And then outside of that, like I do sprint training, and then I'll do static cardio at least like once a week, just like an hour on the Stairmaster or like jogging or something like that. But I try to make it social. So like these running clubs are great, go to a running club for an hour. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, it makes me glad to know that since moving to Austin that I was mentioning to you before, sort of tapped into the running world. Because prior to that, I thought it was just stupid. I only honestly probably did like HIIT type workouts, like sprint training, like I'd get on a spin bike or something or do hills. It was like my only form of cardio. But yeah, seeing some of the stuff on like VO2 and doing at least some static. I mean, it all comes down to like getting a variety of zones, right? Whether it's like zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and everything in between. But
I think it's for sure a mix, like the heart's a muscle, keeping it in shape is clutch.
Right. I got a round of rapid fire questions for you.
Let's do it.
So whatever the first thing is that comes to mind.
Okay.
What's your best business advice?
Do the work.
What's your best marketing advice?
Build a cult.
Favorite part about entrepreneurship?
Freedom.
When are you the most productive?
Early in the morning after the gym.
So workout first thing in the morning, that's what you do?
Yep.
Good routine. Who is your inspiration?
I would say Branson is probably Richard Branson was like one of the first guys I read about on entrepreneurship and stuff, and had that lifestyle, having your own island and all. Like, I mean, come on, it's a dream. Yeah.
He is kind of the legend in like the business space, isn't he?
Total legend.
Tell me one secret or something most people wouldn't know about you.
I'll tell you two. One is my favorite food is pizza.
Okay. You Italian?
Which is challenging when you're like avoiding gluten. I'm not Italian.
Okay.
No, I'm Cajun French.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very Louisiana. Okay.
Yeah.
That adds up.
Yeah. Super Louisiana, right?
Yeah.
12 generations Cajun French. Yeah. So super. There's probably some cousins that got married at some point. My grandparents actually had the same last name. Yeah. We won't go there.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. And then the other one is, I would say my biggest fear in life is not living up to my own expectations, which is a big driver for business.
I feel that a lot. I talk about that a lot. That's by far my biggest fear, is just like the regret of not pursuing the things I thought I could.
Yeah.
What would you change about yourself?
I would be more direct. And growing up in Louisiana, everything's kind of like you just dance around things you want to tell people. And it's like very like friendly and maybe a bit too nice versus like the New York punchy is the opposite. Like New Yorkers are just going to tell you what they think, just like no filter.
Okay, I feel so validated. I'm from Minnesota.
Okay.
And it's called Minnesota Nice.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not. It's the same thing. It's called passive aggressive.
It totally is.
Yeah. I hate it.
And you're not doing anybody any favors.
None.
You know? Yeah.
You think you are.
You think you are.
You're
You think
just
you're being
avoiding
nice.
the uncomfortable thing that needs to be talked about is all you're
Say
doing.
it. Just, yeah. And it still feels so weird, right? Coming from a nice culture.
I know. Yeah. I mean, I feel very validated. Thank you. Yeah. What's your favorite app or resource you're using right now?
I would say two. One is Chronometer, which is like an app for tracking calories and things like that. I'm a huge nerd. I don't do it every day, but it's like great to get things down. And the other one is Audible. I live on Audible. I'm like jamming on Audible things. And a lot of people don't know if you have this subscription, there's a ton of free content on Audible as well. Yeah. If you go to like, you have to kind of like dig around a little bit, but there's like, here's what's included in your membership. And there's like hundreds of books included in your membership every month. You only get them for the month. Yeah.
What's the best book you've read this year or listened to, I guess?
Oh man. God, I might have to check. The most impactful one, I would say like, let's go, most interesting. And it was, Genghis Khan and the making of the modern world. And it was one of those where I would never read it because it's like super thick and dense and like thousands of pages, from this, but it was like 24 hours. And I just like binged it because you're like listening to the story of this guy that conquered like more than half of the world and how he actually killed the least amount of people doing it. But it's all just like, it was basically just marketing and like influence. That's kind of like a business book. Yeah.
And fear tactics.
Oh, total fear tactics. Yeah, for sure. Have you read the book?
No, but I'm familiar with the story
of
Genghis Khan. I actually went to a Genghis Khan like museum in, I think it was like Philadelphia or something. I don't remember, but yeah.
Well, the other interesting part is part of it was just like positive rewards, right? So we say, hey, listen, like you go to a village and say, hey, listen, like here's the thing, we're gonna conquer you. Oh, what does that mean? Well, you get freedom of religion. What? That's crazy. Okay, we never had that. Okay, yeah, you get that big bonus. I know. The other thing is, this is like my drunk history version of it, right? And the other thing is, you get to be part of our trade system. What does that mean? We're going to make more money. Wait, we have freedom of religion and we're going to make more money? Yeah. Oh, and all these like nobles that are in charge, they're not in charge anymore. Like we're like basically in charge, but like anybody can be anybody in this society. There's no like systems where you're like stuck at the bottom and you're like a pleb, right? And they're like, this sounds crazy.
And the alternative is we'll fucking kill you.
Yeah, or we'll kill you.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so sometimes like the people at the top are like, no. We talked to everybody. They all agree. We hate this. Okay, cool. Now we're going to kill all of them. Yeah. And they leave like one guy screaming and covered in blood and he'd go to the next village. He'd be like, you wouldn't believe these people. They killed everyone. So they go to the next village and like, yeah, we're on board.
Yeah.
But that was the net of like, doing it with less blood is like if you get people on a common like currency and economic system and then give them like some personal freedoms, then a lot of people are like, oh, that's actually pretty good. And the other thing is he had advisors from like every religion and like all these countries and places and cultures that he conquered were all part of his council and they're all advising him, right? So he had this like, the challenge is it crumbled very quickly because like he just gave it to his sons, like, boo.
Classic.
Yeah, come
Classic.
on. Yeah, I don't have kids, but if I do, I'm not giving them anything.
I know. It's such a dilemma, man. I would say the same thing, but I don't know until I have kids. And then until you're in that moment, you don't really know.
Yeah.
But I get it, right? It's like, it's a fine line of you want them to understand the value of working and actually not only just the value, but of like how good it feels and how fulfilling it is.
Yeah.
Without just like having everything at your fingertips. But
Daddy gave it to me.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, for every example that it goes good, there's examples that it goes bad. I mean, I don't know. It's a tough call.
It's tough. Yeah.
It's funny. I'm on this like streak of like autobiographies and biographies right now. I think I've read probably like a half a dozen of them.
Oh, wow.
From like Tim Kennedy to Matthew Perry to Terry Crews to...
What's been the top one?
This year, probably Will Smith.
Okay.
It's surprisingly like a personal development book wrapped into Will's incredible story.
Okay.
Despite how you feel about like the whole like Chris Rock thing and his acting or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like it's a very, very good, like he's a compelling storyteller. And within it, it's like, wow, there's a lot of like life lessons in this.
Do you ever listen to the Founders podcast?
Love it.
Yeah, great. Me too. I binged probably 100 episodes in the last few months, but I'm like, I want to read all these biographies, but I'm like, dude, I don't have the time.
No.
Like, there's so many books I want to read. So that's where Audible comes in and amping it up, or podcasts like this, amping it up to like 1.5x and just going through.
Yeah.
It's great.
Because I think the most recent Founders one I listened to was Howard Schultz, I think.
Yeah, that's a good one. I heard him speak at a summit event one time when he was actually thinking about running for president years ago.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, he got crushed because he was a Democrat and then went as an independent because he's like, the party system is broken. We need an independent to pull people together. And so he did it, but both parties like came together to crush him because they don't want a third party, even though 40% of registered voters are independent. So the biggest party is no party.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you think that'll phase out as like the boomers and like the older generation kind of like phase out of the system?
I think it has to at some point. I mean, the parties have so much control over the election system, and they just kind of brainwash everybody into thinking this is the only way, but people are beyond fed up. And you keep seeing the numbers of independent voters rise and rise.
Makes
and
sense.
rise. So I think ultimately at some point there's going to be like, there was a little bit of that almost came out with the Tea Party, and then it just became part of like the super right wing of the Republican Party. And you just have like ups and downs of like, libertarianism. But it's like, I don't know what the name of it's going to be, but there needs to be some type of third party. And I think there's like, in our generation, there's going to be some interest in like things got to change. Yeah.
I hope you're right. I have one last question.
Yeah.
Before I ask that question though, I want to acknowledge you, man. For one, for coming to Austin and doing this interview with me, but also for like continuing to just like pursue this love for health and wellness and helping other people on that journey and getting more protein into people's systems and starting this new venture. And I'm excited to see what happens with it. But yeah, I think everything you're doing is great, and you're definitely making the world a better place. So
well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's tempting because sometimes I think maybe I should just go get a job somewhere.
Yeah.
I could like make good money, right?
Yeah.
And then I think like, oh no, I'm selling out my dream. So even though I'm like, even right now, I'm like not really making any money per se. I'm not making money, right? I'm just like sitting here trying to get a brand off the ground. But I'm like, what would I rather be doing? Nothing. Like, I love doing this. It's great. I love talking. I was telling you the Uber on the way here, the guy's quizzing me on health questions and asking me if juice is healthy or not, and asking me if like how he's going to stop eating fast food. But I'm like, I get it, man. Everybody's on a different part of the journey. So let me meet them where they're at and like try to help people out.
dude, I love it. Appreciate it. What's your plug? Where can people find you?
Instagram is a good one. Iconic Life is the Instagram handle. I've got a link at the top to do a newsletter every week as well. Some of it's health tips. Some of it's like awesome deals I was showing you. We got some stuff coming up for Black Friday. Some of it will be just early release news on YouthRx, this next product I'm working on. So that's probably the best place to just like start at Instagram, and then there'll be some links to other pages there.
Do you have a catchy name for the newsletter?
I'm actually working on one. At first I called it the Iconic Life newsletter. That makes sense. Then I called it Wellness Wednesday. So the theme right now is Wellness Wednesday, and it comes out every Wednesday. Ta-da. But I'm accepting name ideas as well, if you got any catchy good ones.
No, I went through the same journey with my own newsletter.
Oh, really?
It was like 3 Tip Tuesdays.
Okay.
And
I
now
like that.
And now it's called the Health Hustle. Because like,
Health. I love alliteration. I
Yeah.
mean, my name is Billy Bosch. I was born this way. I'm a little bit biased.
Yeah.
But the Health Hustle is great. It's catchy.
Thanks. That's what I'm stuck on right now. So
Yeah. I
we'll
like
see.
it. I stick with it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So it's really whatever your best piece of advice is. So this is actually probably a perfect question for you. So if you were to go back to ground zero of starting the previous business or this new one, which is obviously what you're doing, what's maybe the best piece of advice you'd give to your younger self or anyone else in that situation?
I would say specifically, I'll go broad. Initially, broad is like trust your intuition. I doubted my intuition so many times, and we all have these like times of self-doubt, and it was a huge mistake. I would say 9 times out of 10, my intuition, especially with products and direction around the products, was right. Sometimes it's wrong, but it's better to pursue that wrong path quickly than to like go in the circles of like self-doubt. And I have a bad habit of doubting myself, and then I'll bring almost like too many resources. I'm an over-resourcer, so I'll bring too many opinions in the room, and then it just becomes noisy, and like you don't decide anything. And we had some real struggles, and I had some real frustrations and disappointment from my team members at Iconic over the years, because they're just like, what are you doing, man? We believe in you, and like you're trying to get all these other opinions, all this kind of stuff. So I would just say trust your intuition. Yeah.
Great advice. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you.